Welcome back to the Empire Builders podcast. Dave Young here with Stephen Semple, and we're talking about empires. This is the Empire Builders podcast. You tuned in because you wanted to hear us talk about empires, right?
I hope that's why they
I mean,
tuned in.
I'm assuming that's why you.
Either that or you're in the wrong place. But still, stay with us. You might like it.
If you're expecting steamy ghost stories, this is not your podcast.
Oh, there goes half our audience.
That's all right. Choose who to lose. That's what we always say. People that are interested in steamy ghost stories, this is not it. But aliens, maybe. I'm saying maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Because today's topic, Stephen told me we're going to talk about Alienware as an empire, and I know them because I remember back in the day, one of my kids insisting that that was the only computer that would allow them to play World of Warcraft, in any kind of successful fashion. Does that sound right?
Yep, that would be pretty accurate. Did you end up buying an Alienware computer?
I don't
Yeah.
know. Dad was just the checkbook.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about Alienware. But even before we go into Alienware, I want to take a little bit of a detour because it actually speaks to Alienware. Is one of the things that Alienware was really good at recognizing was things going on in the world. And you know how we often talk about, you know, tapping into what's happening out there and the emotions that's happening out there and looking outside of your world. I had a really interesting conversation this weekend with Bob Camp. Now, Bob Camp is the co-creator of Ren and Stimpy.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, if you remember back at the Slinky episode? Remember when we covered
We
Slinky?
talked about log.
And we talked about log.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, Dave, you are completely right. Bob Camp told me that the whole thing log was actually completely inspired by Slinky.
Oh, yeah. It was just, yeah.
And here's what happened. It was in the very first episode of Ren and Stimpy, and they had produced it, and they suddenly realized just before it was about to go on air, they were a minute short. And he was like, how do we come up a minute freaking short? So that night he decided, I got to come up with a minute of content. And what he decided to do is create a commercial. Thought, well, let's start the commercial. So the very first Ren and Stimpy episode started with that commercial log. And he very specifically wanted to tie into something that was a shared experience, that had a positive emotional context, and that he could kind of have some fun with. But it was that whole looking outside the world. And that's how he came up with log. Now,
Nice.
when I come see you in Austin, people can't see this podcast, but I'm going to show this to Dave. Here's what I have for you, Dave.
Oh my God.
And look who signed
Really?
it.
Yeah. Holy cow.
I have a special present for you, Dave,
That is so sweet.
to commemorate Slinky.
Can I say what you just held up?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it was is that a like an actual gel or slide
No, it's
thing, or it's a print
it's a print that he drew.
of
So he's
log,
drawn
of
of
the little
log.
kid with log, and it's signed by him. That's beautiful. Yeah.
And it says to Dave, you filthy swine.
Filthy swine. I get it. I see what he did there. I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so next time I'm down, we'll have that for you. But now, on to Alienware.
Sure. Why
But
wouldn't we continue
right.
on to the episode?
It is that idea of noticing what's happening in this space,
Mhm.
because Alienware was brilliant on this front, because while the whole industry was moving one way, they moved a different way because they noticed something going on. So Alienware, for the first year of its life, was not Alienware. When they first founded it, it was called Sakai of Miami.
Mhm.
And the name Sakai comes from a famous Japanese World War II ace. But they decided to change it to Alienware because the two founders, Nelson Gonzalez and Alex Agula, were both fascinated with aliens. They are complete alien fans. They believe in aliens, all of that. And so they decided, let's call it Alienware because that's a little bit more fun. So they were both childhood friends, born and raised in Miami, first generation Americans. Parents, were Cuban. So this is the other interesting thing. Not Silicon Valley, Miami
Miami.
is where this business started. And
Okay.
they did really, really well. 10 years after founding, 2006, they sold to Dell.
Mhm.
Now, I was not able to find the price that they sold to Dell for, but I'm assuming a pretty good price tag. And that was the year that their sales hit 225 million. And they were on quite a growth spurt because the year before they were 172 million. They were doing really, really well. But while they were founded in 1996, our story really starts in 1993. Because in 1993, the Pentium processor comes out. And the
Okay. Yeah.
Pentium processor changes the computer world because it opens the door for video games to be able to be run on
Yeah,
PCs.
before that, it was the 286, and the 386, and the 486, and the just clones, right? Just
Yeah.
and then
But the
Pentium all of a
But the
sudden was
Pentium had enough power that you could now do video games on computers. So by the mid 1990s, computers are starting to be custom built for gamers because while the Pentium can run it, there's all sorts of problems with how peripherals connect together
Mhm.
and it running properly. So basically, this cottage industry sprouted up of people specifically making computers for gamers. And Nelson hung out with gamers and he started making custom PCs in Miami. And here's the interesting thing. You would think, well, Miami's kind of a bit of a weird place to be doing that. Like, where do you find your motherboards and all those other things? And it turns out Miami is the gateway to Latin America. So there
Absolutely.
was warehouses full of tech gear that was being shipped to Latin America. So he
Okay.
was actually able
Oh,
to source stuff locally.
sorta tap into the artery that is feeding South America.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, for people that are geographically challenged, like me, I remember the first time somebody told me, if you look at a map, almost all of South America is east of Miami.
Right.
It's east of Miami.
Yeah,
That
which is
doesn't make
hard to
sense
get your
till
head
till
around.
you
I
look at a
know.
globe.
Yeah.
So it's just yeah, they're just flying south. Cool, cool.
But he grew up again, his parents, were immigrants, and he grew up frustrated as a teen, working, like, what he would call these dumb jobs, and his parents didn't have a lot of money, but one of the things he pointed out is Cuban American culture is very supportive. Like, if you were a kid growing up and you said, "I wanna be president," they're like, "You can be president." Very, very supportive of children's, dreams, and he had a friend, had a business, building, PCs, and he ordered a gaming PC from him, but he wanted to watch it being built. He was like, "Okay, I'm gonna buy one from you, but I
Okay.
wanna watch it being built." He watched this being built, and look, in the '90s, it wasn't easy to build or configure machines to work with games. Like, it was
Yeah.
quite a challenge, and Doom was the game that got him going. Like, when he started playing Doom, he was like, "I need a machine for this." So he's hanging out with his buddy Alex, and they decide the first idea that they have for a business is do a board game, and they built a board game around pro wrestling. So it's interesting that the
Okay.
first thing was not build a computer. It's build this, and it was a tactical game, and Nelson created the characters, and it sold pretty well, but it didn't really make a lot of money. On the side, Nelson was making these computers and he got interviewed by a tech guy and he ended up getting a job at the tech guy and he learned a lot because basically what was happening is they were supporting computers, post-production in people's houses and things along that lines. This is when he realized the stuff has got to work better with peripherals. So he started building a few machines for people that he knew. The big difference was this whole idea of the video card and the motherboard and the peripherals all needing to work in a specific manner for gaming. Because in a lot of computers, it just simply didn't work well. And then you added the new drivers, it just stuff didn't work well. He started building these computers, and then eventually, enough people were asking that they ended up forming the business and starting Alienware. Like you talk about, like even the chassis were crappy built. They often had to actually upgrade the chassis and things like this. Like you would cut
Mhm.
yourself on the metal and things along that lines. And the
Yeah,
internet
card
was
might fit in
new.
one slot, not in another.
Yeah, and the internet was new, and people didn't really know how to configure to the internet. But you know what? They were out there doing it. And here's the big turning point for them. First big turning point.
Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up this story and tell you how to apply this lesson to your business right after this.
What? Message. What? No. What is the message? How?
Media.
What?
Not what, but how. How is media.
Which is first?
Message. What you have to say is first.
But I thought how was first.
No, media is second. How the message is delivered is less important than what you have to say. Your message.
So the message is key?
Yes. Oh, and you can book your free starter session on this podcast website.
Back to you, Dave. Dave? Dave?
Let's pick up our story where we left off, and trust me, you haven't missed a thing.
And here's the big turning point for them. First big turning point. There was a company called Falcon Northwest that they saw an advertisement in a gaming magazine for. And the advertisement kept showing up in these gaming magazines. And he went, you know what? This company is able to advertise so consistently. There's clearly a business here. We need to lean into this.
Okay.
So they then decided to do a little ad in PC Magazine. But what they recognized was gamers are kind of nerdy, so they need to make this ad a bit nerdy. So they did this weird looking alien hovering over a PC with all the different components and the price. And that's basically how they did this advertisement because,
Okay.
they thought, they love aliens and they wanted to lean into it. And they offered the price, and it was basically a mail order computer. And they basically quit their jobs. They both invested $5,000, all put on credit card to run this ad and start this business. And they also saw things like 3D gaming coming. So they knew that this was going to be a big deal. So they ran that ad. Then another thing they did was there was another magazine out there called Boot Magazine. And they sent, a unit to these guys. And they loved it, had these great reviews. Now, noticing what's going on out there. What they noticed at the time was here was the big trend in the computer industry. So they were doing all this dabbling around on the gamer side.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found was big companies were not focusing on gamers. Big companies were trying to kick open the business market. And that was
Right.
all about making every machine the same, making it work with the business software and bringing down the price. That was what everybody was doing. Meanwhile, they noticed that gaming, because of the power of the chips and whatnot, you were able to play more games on PCs. And so there was this need for gaming devices. Now, the gaming devices, while the price of computers were going down, like at the time, you could get an iMac for $1,200, you get a PC for $500. They were selling their units for $6,000 to $7,000.
Mm.
I want to say this again.
Yeah.
10 times the price.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing that they also did notice.
I don't remember my kids telling me that, but
That's what I was going to say. I think you would remember buying it.
I remember the green logo on the thing.
But here's the other thing that they noticed going on. The iMac, which was again premium price, PCs are $500, iMac's $1,200.
Uh-huh.
The iMac was beautifully designed.
Yeah. This was the little color IMAX, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sold like hotcakes.
By
So
color, I mean
here's
the case was different. You could get a blue one, you could get an orange one. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what they decided. Their machines, especially if they're charging this premium price, need to be beautiful as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what they did? They went to a custom auto body shop and they had them spray paint the cases.
All right.
So that basically they had this cool, like it wasn't hot rod design, it was an alien design, but it was that whole idea of this case coming that was beautifully designed and spray painted and all of that. And they got that idea from seeing what Apple did with the iMac. Now, here's the other thing that they noticed. How Dell was doing mail order businesses, right? Because Dell, you could do the custom computer. And what they realized was certain components went together with certain things. What they created was, if you're buying this thing, here's the peripherals that can go with it, right? So in their online ordering, when you're doing the configuring, it would naturally help you configure it to things that work together. And then the next step they did, they recognized there were certain things gamers fell in love with, like the joystick. Gamers would
Mm-hmm.
absolutely have. So a gamer could send their joystick to them, and they would configure a machine and test it, make sure the joystick worked with the machine.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
So make it easy. Just
Make it easy. Make it
Mhm.
really, really easy. So as their volume grew, they ran into some really interesting challenges. So challenge number one was sometimes, because they were still pretty small, something would come out and they couldn't get it. Like, there was a particular computer that came out on Gateway that they couldn't get the part that they want, like the motherboard that so they would buy that computer, strip the motherboard out, put a different motherboard in, use it for themselves, put that new motherboard into one of the machines that they were making.
Uh,
And there was another point where they ran into a real issue because they were taking, they would take these credit card deposits, and there was one point where the credit card companies came along and said, "We don't understand what you're doing because you're the scary little business in Miami," and they started holding on to the funds. And they got lucky where they managed to convince a banker to come out and see what they were doing, and they found a bank that would give them a line of credit so they could keep doing what they were doing because they bootstrapped this whole thing. They needed those deposits in order to buy the equipment to build it to then send to you and get the
mhm.
rest of the money. And at one point, they were growing so fast that what would happen is they would get their next office warehouse space, and by the time they moved into it, the whole idea was, we're in office A and we're gonna move to office B. By the time they moved into office B, they needed A and B.
Uh-huh.
Like, they just couldn't keep ahead of the curve. Early 2000, another interesting thing happened. The big companies found themselves in crisis because of these low price points, and IBM actually got out of the business, right? Remember, IBM sold their business, but they were still confident things were gonna work for them because they saw another big change happen, and that was the Xbox. Now,
Mhm.
one could say the Xbox would be a threat because now you could play a game on a console, but what they knew was more games would be developed.
Yes, and more people will be playing games.
And gaming would go mainstream because
Yeah.
now you got Microsoft promoting gaming, that it would actually grow. And this is what I mean about these guys were really good at looking outside the world. They looked at Apple,
Mhm.
make it beautiful. They looked at Dell, here's how you configure machines through selling online.
Mhm.
They looked at the crisis going on in the computer industry, but at the same time, Xbox, and
Mhm.
they didn't see it as a threat. What they realized is this would make games go mainstream. They were really out there watching and understanding their marketplace. Now, 2003 comes along and Dell decides to enter the gaming space,
Uh-huh.
and they get kind of nervous, and there's one point where Dell approaches them to buy them, and the deal, they do all this due diligence, and a few months later, it falls apart. But you know what? To their credit, they kept doing what they were doing, and 3 years later, Dell comes back to them again and says, "Yeah, we wanna buy you." And of course, at that point, they're going, "Are you serious this time?" Like, and I was never able to find how much they sold them to Dell for. I'm sure they did very well. A few years ago, Dell published something saying that they felt that the Alienware part of their business was at, like, worth, like, $3 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. Quite the interesting, to me, quite the interesting story, especially where the whole industry, all the big players are going one direction.
Yeah. Well, and they picked a niche that allowed them to observe everything and pick the best, little innovations from a variety of places and
Yes.
integrate them into their business model,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which, is we tell people, like, you don't wanna copy something that like, you don't wanna copy a whole business from somebody else, but
Right.
pick pick and choose. Pick the things that somebody's innovated that are gonna apply to you.
Yeah.
And do a little of that,
Well,
then
in the
sprinkle it
Apple
in like spice.
right, and the Apple computer one is almost a nice example of that, Dave. That's a great observation because if you think about,
Mhm,
so the Apple computer is a great example of that, where, could get things of different colors. What they did instead was, let's go to an auto body shop and have this metal thing painted,
yeah.
right? So they learned from it, but then they put their own spin on that idea, right? So yeah, it's exactly what we said. So I found there was just lots of really neat things that they did from just watching others.
Well, and I'm glad it worked out for 'em. I wonder
Yeah.
where they're just, like, sitting on a beach somewhere enjoying a piña colada today somewhere, probably.
Whatever it is, they're doing
They're
okay.
doing okay. Well, thank you for, telling us the tale of Alienware. What a cool thing.
It's a fun one, right?
Uh-huh. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please share us, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a big, fat, juicy 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to schedule your own 90-minute empire building session, you can do it at empirebuildingprogram.com.